Welcome to the AirCon Vault. Here you can find recordings of the live streams from Airwiggle's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: A Sound Effect, Aftertouch Audio, Boom Library, FMON, Game Audio Learning, Game SoundCon, Kilohertz, Rev Rooms, Soundcuts, Strata from Audio Kinetic, and Airwiggles, the online home for audio people. We hope you enjoy the video.
I'm gonna introduce myself. My name is Zaira. You can call me Sai for short. I am a sound designer from Mexico City. I've been an audio engineer for 10 years now. Just wait a second here. There's something making a little bit of noise. Sorry about that. Yeah, I've been an audio engineer for 10 years now. And my background, so I have worked as a sound designer and FX editor for TV shows, for podcasts, for some TV commercials as well. I also have a background on dialogue localization for video games, and more recently, I have been doing ambience design for a couple of TV shows, for this type of shows that you would find in streaming platforms such as Netflix and Prime and all of that stuff. Yeah, so more in the sound design area. Let's look at the agenda for this talk. First, I'm gonna do my best to explain to you what are ambiences, or what is an ambience, and then we will move on to learn why do I design them. Then we're gonna view how to use ambiences to communicate things, to communicate feelings, to communicate information. Then I have some key elements or relevant words for you. Then we're gonna look into something that I call, or that I've been calling, the 3-layer approach. And then we have a few considerations when designing ambiences, just like a few things to look out for or to just keep in mind about. And then we'll just conclude with a summary, and finally the Q&A. Okay, first of all, what are ambiences? What are these ambiences? Well, this one is easy because ambiences is just the background noise that surrounds us, is the environmental noise that we can hear all around us all the time. For example, right now I am in my apartment and I have some traffic in the background, so I have no control of it. It is just there. It is part of the environment, and that's it. It is the background noise. That is the ambience. So think about audiovisual production, like movies or TV shows or even video games. They also have ambiences in them to be part of all of the sonic elements, along with the music, with the dialogue, with the sound effects. So it is a part of a whole. These can be called sound atmospheres as well, and these ones could take, we can design ambiences as basic or as common as, for example, the ambience of a coffee shop, or something just as surreal as a planet we don't know. So we can start to imagine things and imagine how we want that planet or that spaceship to sound. That's the beauty of ambiences, I think. Another particular thing about ambiences is that in our lives we don't usually notice them because, again, they are in the background. So we just assume that they are there, they are part of the environment, and they are being cohesive with everything else. So when designing ambiences, we are trying to also support things like the dialogue and the story, most importantly the story. So we need our ambiences to be cohesive with everything else. For example, imagine that the script or the thing that we are watching, the video or the cut, has a scene of a car crash, for example. We would expect the ambience to have maybe some police vehicles or ambulances or something with a little bit of chaos. Because if we put things like things that they don't normally are in a car crash, it wouldn't make any sense at all. We wouldn't be communicating anything about the car crash because we want the audience, the viewer, to be in a tense kind of emotion, kind of a feeling. So we want to use the ambience as well to evoke those emotions. To, yeah, maybe if I listen to a siren in the background, I'm gonna go and like, oh my God, what is happening? So this is really getting my attention. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. You can answer, I mean, you can ask questions. I'd be happy to answer them a little bit later. Yeah, as I was saying, the ambience has an impact in our emotions, in our behavior. For example, think about the weather. Think about a cloudy day. Think about a thunderstorm. It does have an impact on how we are going to feel about certain scene or certain moment in the video that we are watching. Okay, before going into that part, I'm just gonna look really quick at the questions if you have. Okay, you don't have any questions, it's okay. Let's move on. Okay, what is the purpose behind designing ambiences? As I just tell you, the ambiences are there to help communicate what the rest of the sonic elements are communicating as well. So when I say narrative, I'm talking about the actual script. Maybe it is already in the form of the video, maybe we already have the cut, but sometimes I have worked with scripts that have a pretty good detail about the scene and about what is happening in a particular location in this scene. For example, it would say our main character is feeling down, is feeling sad. So that way I know which type of elements I'm gonna put into that particular scene because I'm trying to communicate as well whatever the script is trying to communicate. Sorry about that, is my little dog. Yeah, this is what I was just talking about. Give information about the place and how we should feel or react. For example, I have another example here for you to imagine. This is gonna be a lot of imagining things. Picture two contrasting scenes. In one side, we have a fine dining restaurant, like the finest restaurant like that you can think of. And then in the other scene, we have maybe these community kitchens where people of low income or low resources go to eat for free. They both are kind of a restaurant type of scenarios, but the difference is that, for example, in the fine dining restaurant, I would put glasses cleaning, or maybe silverware, or maybe the people is not we don't have many plate sounds, like, because in those type of restaurants I would think that people doesn't make a lot of noise because it would be maybe rude. And in the other scene, in the community kitchen scene, for me, I would say that it could sound a little bit noisier, like with no glasses clinging, no silverware, silver cutlery, no ceramic plates. It's just like plastic cups, plastic trays. So that is information that we want to give the audience to think about. So if we close our eyes and we listen to that, maybe we are already imagining where we are at, or where our main character is at. That was just an example, but you can give with ambiences even more information. Another example that I've thought about would be, maybe imagine a scene in the suburbs and another scene in this dangerous neighborhoods, like, again, low resources neighborhoods or poor areas. If I wanted to, talking specifically about, I don't know, the sound of dogs in the background, for me, I would put more aggressive dogs in a poor neighborhood, and maybe smaller and cute dog sounds in the suburbs. Also, you can think about I'm not going anywhere with that example, but you can start to imagine those type of scenarios. And again, these ambiences, because they are trying to be cohesive with the rest of the elements, they act, or they create a foundation for the dialogue to fall in, for the other effects to fall in. And this way, all of the elements, including the ambience, is communicating the same thing. Think, for example, again, in the case of the fine restaurant and the community kitchen, what would happen if in the community kitchen I would put silverware, or I would put just like wine glasses? It wouldn't make sense for me. It wouldn't be communicating the same thing. So the purpose is that it has to be cohesive with the rest of the elements that are trying to be in line with what the script is saying. Let me look again at the questions. What are my favorite examples of great ambiences in any films, TV shows that I like? Well, ambiences in video games, I enjoy a lot. So recently I discovered a YouTube channel. I think it is called Daydream Gaming or something like that. Oh, thank you for spotlight that, Luis. Thank you. And what they do is they just do walks around the environments in the video games. I enjoy those type of videos too much. But recently I can think about the movie Flow. So if you've seen this movie, you know that it has no dialogue at all. And yeah, it was a pretty good movie to enjoy ambiences. Those are the things that come to my mind right now. um, Let me go again here. Okay, how do I design them? This is more of a workflow that I do for myself. So this is based on my personal experience. It doesn't mean that this can work for all of you, maybe some of you, but I encourage you to take note if you want, and just take whatever you want from this information. But yeah, this is based on my own experience, on the way that I have been working lately. So how do I do that? First, I need to get the cut, get the video, and of course, watch it from beginning to end, trying to understand the narrative, the story. What is it about? What are the characters communicating? What are the locations like? I would encourage you to try to listen in your head or imagine how they can sound for you. So for example, as I am watching the cut or the video, I am making notes of this type of things. Like, for example, if I know that the main character lives in a luxurious area, I can start thinking about which type of cars am I going to put in the background, even which kind of birds am I going to use, which kind of dogs, which kind of crickets, all of these notes. I start making them as I am watching the video, and I do tend to imagine or just try to listen in my head how would they sound to communicate what the story is talking about. And this means that I put markers in my session, and I also take notes in a notebook or my cell phone. I am a person that forgets everything every 5 minutes, so I need to take note of everything. Then I would prepare something that I call a draft toolkit, or just like a starting point toolkit. And this means, yeah, as I told you, I make notes about the type of birds, the type of, well, not the type of birds, it's just maybe notes about the scenes or the locations that repeat the most. So for example, in the video that I am watching, they are constantly in a park, or maybe there are a lot of street views. I would make note of that, because those sounds are the ones that I'm gonna be using the most, and also the characteristics of the sounds. Is it more indoors or outdoors? Would I need more room tones, or city rumbles, or beach rumbles? And again, don't forget what the story is trying to communicate, because sometimes it is easy to just assume. I don't know, if I see a park or a supermarket, it's easy to assume that, oh, it is a park, it's gonna have birds, it's gonna have dogs, it's gonna have kids, it's gonna have traffic. Yeah, but what is it that you are trying to maybe put a spotlight on? Yeah, maybe I was thinking earlier about an example. So imagine this: there's a scene, we're gonna have two different scenarios, but it's gonna be the same scene. Just imagine that our main character is going to a park and meet some stranger, but we don't see any kids running in the background. We don't see anything. We just know that they are in a park. And in the first scenario, the person is gonna maybe break up with the person number two, and in the second scenario, they are not gonna break up. They are just gonna hang out and have the best day ever. So the elements might be similar. Both might have birds, both might have traffic, but the feeling that I am trying to communicate is what's going to change. So in the first scenario, in the breakup scenario, I would assume that I want the ambience to be maybe a little bit nostalgic, maybe a little bit quiet, a little bit calm, because we know that something sad is about to happen. So I wouldn't put a lot of birds. I wouldn't put kids in the background. I would just maybe play with some traffic, just like a quieter type of mood. And then in the other example, I would, so this is the best day that they are going to have. Yeah, I would put birds chirping, maybe some little dogs, maybe kids, maybe something that has this happy feeling, happy mood. But it is the same scene. So I think you can now see better, or yeah, just picture a little bit better what is it that I'm trying to say here. Continuing with the workflow, once I gather these sounds, again, these sounds are not gonna be perfect from the beginning because this is only a draft, a starting point. But they are gonna be the base. Think of them as temporary files. They might make it to the final mix, but we are just gonna build around them. So I would categorize them in some folders that make sense to me, because I'm just gonna go back and forth between looking for sounds and then importing them to the session, and then back to the sounds and then the session, and then I move to a further scene, and then I remember that I got like a specific sound for that scene, so I quickly know where to look for, because right now what I want to do is just start to get a rough base, a rough idea of the things that I took note on, and then I can later perfect things and just tweak more and more. I hope that made sense. Let me just take a little bit of water here. Okay, next. I don't think I would do this for all of my scenes. Think about the ones that the scenarios or the locations that repeat the most, that are gonna be repeating the most. For example, think that our main character spends a lot of time at home. You, or at least me, I wouldn't design one ambience for the entire chapter or the entire video. I would do maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or even more, depending on the project. I would do different versions of the same ambience or of the same location, because even when we are in the same space, it doesn't sound the same in the morning than it sounds in the evening than it does at night. So we want to have different versions to mix and match, and this way we keep it from sounding repetitive and just boring. And in these versions, we can, for example, in one version we can put birds, but in the other version we can put car horns in the background. In the next version, we can combine them. So this way we have more control about the mood that we are aiming for. Next, we have key elements or key words, relevant words. These are words that I try to always keep in mind when designing ambiences. So I'm not sure if I can say these are actual definitions for those concepts, but I think you would get what I mean once I get there. So, a narrative. I have been repeating a lot about this narrative. We need to stick to the story. Remember that I told you that everything needs to be cohesive, everything needs to communicate the same thing, needs to be on the same path, because it needs to make sense with the story. So the narrative, the script gives information about the weather, about the level of presence in the background. Maybe the script talks about a hospital, but do we know which type of hospital is this? Is it an empty hospital? Is it a haunted hospital? Is it the trauma section of the hospital with everything is just busy and machines beeping like crazy? So we need that information to communicate the narrative better. Then we have contrast. I put you a couple of examples about contrast, about the fine dining restaurant and then the community kitchen. We need to have those types of contrast. And also, for example, think that you have two scenes, like one after the other, and both are busy scenes. Think, for example, a supermarket. So both are scenes in a supermarket. We need to find elements that can contrast with each other, because if we are watching the first scene and then we jump into the next one, we are not gonna notice the ambience change. So we need to be able to contrast, even though the scene seems the same. We need to create that contrast by changing elements, as I was just telling you. For example, in the first scene, you have more footsteps. You put a focus on the footsteps a little bit more, and then in the next one, you can put a focus on the crates and the things that people are moving around. I don't know if this makes sense, but yeah, we need to be able to create that contrast, just in order for us to not believe that it is the same ambience for both scenes. Then we have presence. This one is interesting because even though we watch scenes that seem to have no people around, or that the locations seem to be empty, they are not empty. They always have something in the background, unless you want them to be empty. But think, for example, an office, a quiet office. Even the quietest of the office has some beeping around, or maybe the printers are going on and off from time to time. Maybe there is some quiet typing in the background. Maybe there are a couple of footsteps pass-bys. So we're not watching that people is in there, but we know that there is people because we can hear the activity, the movement. So this is the presence, and we are convinced that someone else is there too, unless you don't want that. Again, stick to the narrative. And also, what makes our ambience convincing is texture. This one, I think, this one should be easier, because when I think about texture, the first thing that comes to my mind is the rustle of the trees, like the leaves moving with the wind. So this gives a little bit of texture, and it avoids the ambience from sounding just too still, too not boring, but just like not moving at all, with zero dynamics. And it makes it convincing. The texture, the footsteps also give us texture. For example, when you're in the street or when you watch a scene of the streets, you can hear a little bit of the, especially the heels in the background, and that makes it convincing. Again, we are trying to communicate a story. Before I dive into this, let me check the questions. Okay. Oh my God, this is a pretty long question. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave the questions at the end just to be a little bit faster on the presentation. Okay, just wait a second here. Yeah, the 3-layer approach. Again, this part I think is the most important part here, but I want to repeat that this is a workflow that I do. I don't know if anyone else does it this way. You can try it. You can take whatever you need from this. So, what is this 3-layer approach? This 3-layer approach will allow us to have a little bit more control with our ambiences, and it's gonna make them more balanced too. So the first layer is going to have, when I say layer, it's not that I'm saying that you should use only one sound. I mean that you can have as many sounds as you want, but they are part of the first layer. I hope that made sense. So yeah, the first layer is gonna be the steady and anchoring sounds, the still sounds. Some of these sounds can be, for example, room tones or city rumbles, beach rumbles, or maybe fan and AC ventilations, maybe a constant water flow. These sounds have maybe no dynamic, or yeah, almost no dynamic. They are just still plain. They don't change at all. But they do give us information about, for example, the perceived size of the room, or the perceived distance of the city or the place. For example, a city rumble wouldn't put us or wouldn't locate us in a traffic light. It is just more of like an aerial view of the entire city. It is just like, yeah, like a paste. I don't know. Then we have our second layer. In this layer, we have dynamics, we have movement, and we have the presence and the texture that I told you about earlier. We do have here all of the interesting sounds and sounds that that give movement. The key word here is movement. So we can have, the footsteps, the cutlery, the cups clinging, the tree rustle, or the printers, or just like the paper handling in the office. We can have birds, we can have insects, we can have frogs, we can have anything that gives movement to the ambience. Then we have our third layer. And this layer in particular, for this layer in particular, I could use either the entire loop of the sound, or I can just treat it as a specifics layer in which I would put just individual effects according to the narrative that I am supporting. For example, a single ambulance pass by, or a single dog bark, or I am going so basic with these examples with the birds and the dogs and the traffic, but I hope that makes sense for you. I wish I could think about more like that different type of sounds, but I hope that you get what I mean with this. So yeah, this third layer is more focused on the narrative. Like everything is going to be focused on a narrative, but this third layer is gonna have one or two specific sounds according to the scene that I am supporting. Okay, for this slide here, you don't have to memorize anything. This is just, I wanted to show you just a quick setup of how I would arrange the layers for a 5-1 channel distribution. We're not going to talk about 5-1 channel distribution. I just want you to see the groups that I have there. So let me just drink a little bit of water. In the first group, we have 3 mono layers. These layers are going to be feeding my center channel. In the next group, I have more layers that are going to feed my left and right front channels. And then I have 2 more layers, or 2 more tracks that are going to feed my left and right surround. So now that we have those groups, we can look at the 3-layer technique that I applied to that. So again, if we look at the first group here that is going to the center channel, I have the 3 layers. So I have my anchoring sounds, which is the layer 1. Then I have my movement sounds, which is going to be in yellow there. And then I have my third layer, which is going to be the blue-ish track. I also have the 3 layers for the left and right speakers, and I only have 2 layers for the surround because there is not really much of that information happening in the back. Everything is going to be more in the center and the left and right channel. Again, you don't have to learn or memorize anything about the 5-1 channel. I just wanted you to know that each of the speaker groups, or speakers have this approach as well. And this is more of the details of the third layer specifics. Yeah, as I just told you before, this is not a must that you should follow. This is the way that I do things. You can try, of course, you can take note, you can take whatever you want from this approach. And for example, if you're doing a stereo setup, or maybe the content that you are designing for doesn't require a lot of detail, you can just use 1 or 2 layers. That's fine. A few considerations. This is gonna be interesting. So yeah, at the end of the day, we are just, so look at this. This is just a sum of many sounds, and then we add the dialogue on top, and then we add music, and then we add more hard effects, and then we add sound effects. So we need to be careful about the way that we treat our ambiences. So what I would do is just take out any frequency information that I wouldn't need for that particular case. So there are a lot of sounds, recorded sounds, that have a lot of hiss, especially, and a lot of hum noise. So I always listen to how the track was recorded, and I just take out everything that I don't need, because I don't want that to be part of the overall ambience, and I don't want things to be muddy. And I also want to create space for more elements to some. Another important here is that we need to remember that we are designing a bunch of elements. So I think a lot of us can relate to this, that when we are mixing or EQing one sound by itself, like isolated, when we listen to it with the rest of the stuff, it doesn't sound good. So what I do is just go back and forth between EQing it isolated, and then just see how it sounds with the rest of the layers that I am putting in. And I also try to keep my balance in order to avoid things to go like too much on the low end of things or the high end of things. I try to even things out, but maybe I do, because it is not always going to be balanced. I don't look for that. It's just that I try to avoid overpowering one frequency range. So I try to distribute things a little bit better in the spectrum. But of course, I'm gonna be having a little bit more information in the highs or in the mids or in the lows. But I do have I do want to compensate that as well. Wet over dry. Yeah, this is just a quick note here. I find that wet sounds or natural recordings sound better when they are blended than just recording separate things in the studio and then applying some audio suite reverb or delay. You could do that if you want to. I'm not saying it is bad or it is wrong, but for me, I find more useful to record a dog barking already in the street than just taking the dog into the studio and applying the reverb later, because I do want the natural reflections that are happening in the street. I hope that made sense. And voila. Yeah, I have a consideration about voila because the project that I worked recently on required me to separate the voila from the ambiences, because the ambiences would go to an international track, or the M&E track, and uh, Amazon requires you to not have any distinguishable language in your ambiences. So yeah, this you can, depending on the project you are working on and the flexibility that you have with that project, you can add voila or not. But I would try to do my best and just take out any words that can be legible from that. And yeah, I already told you this. So in summary, we learned that the ambience is the background noise that surrounds us. We design them to support the narrative, to support a story, to communicate information, and also to influence or evoke certain emotions in the viewers. We viewed a little bit of the 3-layer approach that I do, with the 3 layers being the first one, the steady and anchoring sounds, the second one, the movement, presence, and texture sounds. And then the third layer is going to have the specific details, specific nuances about the ambience that we are designing, or the scene that we are supporting. And then the considerations that we just reviewed. So thank you for staying this far. Now I'm gonna look at the questions. Give me just a second here to stop sharing. Okay, I'm just gonna filter for the most popular, if that's okay. How often do you record your own ambiences versus using a library? I think for me it's 50-50. So if I get a project, depending on how early I get the project, I can ask for the script, gather this information, and just do a few visits to the places that I imagine that they are gonna be helpful for me, but I don't spend too much time scouting or looking for these sounds. If I can get them with the library and they sound better, I'm gonna use the library sounds, because they are easier to get for me. Here in Mexico, I think we just have a lot of traffic noise everywhere, so sometimes and people just play music everywhere now, so it is kind of difficult to find good places to record ambiences. But even if I am not working on a specific project, I would go to different locations and just take my recorder out and record and save it for a later use. So yeah, I would say it's a 50-50 for me. Next, we have which should be the range in dBs between the quieter and the loudest ambience. Well, I think this one depends again on the specifics of the specifications for the platform that you are trying to work for. I have done, like, I don't think for me applies like a specific standard for all of the projects that I work, but the quieter ambience maybe was in about the minus 55 LKFS, and then the loudest one could get to maybe minus 40, minus 35, the loudest. Yeah, this would be maybe crowds or concerts. Yeah, but I haven't been in a situation in which I must work within a specific number to hit a specific number. It depends on the project, but I would ask to my producer or to my supervising sound editor which are gonna be the sound ranges for that particular project. Okay, this one is answered. Okay. This one, I love that question because this happens to me a lot. And what has helped me here is speaking again to my producer, to my sound supervising editor, maybe doing kind of a brainstorming about what we imagine the ambiences. For example, in an empty apartment, yeah, you need to have clarity on the narrative that you are trying to communicate. For example, the questions I would ask questions to myself. For example, is this apartment in the downtown of the city, or is it more in the countryside? And maybe for this pretty steady ambiences inside apartments or inside houses, I would put information just like birds and crickets and dogs, because they do happening outside. But what I would do is just like filter them out, take high frequencies out, and this way we can be convincing about that the birds are outside of your home and not in your bedroom. So you can use all of these type of sounds that I just described. You can use the dogs, the birds, the cars, but just filter the information out so that way the viewer knows that they are happening in the outside of that space. And for the inside, you can also play, for example, right now in my apartment, I have people living like upstairs. I have an apartment of, like, I don't own an apartment upstairs, but there is people living upstairs. And I also know that there's people living like beside my apartment. So there is always like the chairs, the dragging of the chairs, or they do have a dog, so I can hear the paws of the dog. So this way you can have movement. within the space that seems just like quiet and boring. I hope that answers this question. This one. How do you handle vocals in ambience, making them clearly human voices but not understandable or distracting? Okay, this one, first, I think I would take the high frequencies a little bit down because it takes out the clarity of the dialogue. Then, this is a tip that somebody shared with me. I would just layer many wallas or many crowds and just bounce them into one single file. So this way maybe you can have French mixed with Spanish mixed with German, and you wouldn't notice which type of language that is. But before printing everything, of course, if I could edit each individual walla layer to just take out any obvious parts that you think that they would be noticeable, take them out, do larger crossfades, they also work. But yeah, I think the most useful tips are the taking out a little bit of the high end and just print down a mix of different languages and different crowds. I think I have 20 more minutes. Thank you guys for staying this far. Let me just go with one more question. How did you develop your intuition for ambience? Was it natural or from experience? I think it was a little bit of both, but more in the side of experience. This one was just about going back and forth with my supervising sound editor, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of just like really when I go to a place, I try to notice the characteristics of that place, just as I told you about the example of the fine dining restaurant and then the community kitchen. So when I go to certain areas of the city, I just pay attention to which type of traffic there is in the area, or which type of cars, or for example, even which type of birds. Because think about the cliche of the of being in I don't know if this word is right, the cemetery for the people. The the type of birds that I would put there are just like more scary birds, just like an owl or a sparrow or a crow. And for example, in a more happy area, or just like a regular happy park, not like horror park, I would put more of that happy birds type of animals. But yeah, I think it was just like brainstorming a lot and just paying attention to the places that I go to and the characteristics of those places and how noisy they are. I have a lot of questions, guys. Thank you for making all of these questions. I think I lost myself in the questions. Um, 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 um. Okay, this one is long. Let me read it. When thinking about the elements used to create the space, say for a forest scene in a game, for example, to use generic sounds of birds and animals, or it is important to stay in the confines of the locations, for example, using a native bird from the Congo in place of a bird in the Amazon. Well, again, this depends on the story you are trying to communicate. Of course, if the place that you are trying to design for has more like a Brazilian type of visuals or information, yeah, visual information, you can try to look for the specific birds that are the in Brazil. Or, for example, talking about the traffic again, I I told you that the traffic here in Mexico City gets pretty busy, gets crazy, cars horning all the time. But if I think about the traffic in places like Mumbai, for example, it's not gonna be a lot of cars content. It's gonna be more about motorcycles traffic. Um, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, you can, according to your script, to your narrative, to whatever it is that you're trying to communicate, you can stick and you can research for the birds of or the traffic or the elements of that specific area. But if you don't have this information and it is just like a generic type of sounds, yeah, I would say you can use those too. It is not a like a rule to do the research and get the specific bird of that area. Of course, if I am designing for a street scene here in Mexico City and I use a bird that it is only heard in Africa or I don't know, in Russia, I am going to notice because I am watching that it is Mexico City and there are things that are telling me that that scene is located in Mexico City. So it is not gonna make sense for me. I hope that answers the question. And so yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it here, guys, because my voice is just getting a little bit weird. Um, I am happy to answer all of your questions, of course. I'm not sure if I can take a screenshot or maybe I don't know how can we do this. Luis, if you can help me, yeah, to just to get all of the questions that I have left, and I am happy to answer the questions for you guys. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Luis. And if you have any more things to share with me or to talk, I am happy to talk with you guys. Just send me a message or add me to the socials or whatever. Thank you, guys.